If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word CRISIS to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
How's the makeup tonight? According to Max Factor at Superdrug, it's vanilla almond. A busy show tonight. Comedy legends the Krankies are live at 10 o'clock for Mark Meets. They're going to talk about their amazing career, their marriage, and what they think of modern comedy. The Krankies live at 10. In the big question, should we have calorie counts on restaurant menus? Plus my all-star panel, another great British game show. And in my big opinion, in 2 minutes' time, why won't Boris rule out future lockdowns? If I was Prime Minister, I would. I'll see you after the headlines with Bethany.
Thanks, Mark. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The UK is sending a further £100 million worth of high-grade military equipment to Ukraine's armed forces. It follows a Russian rocket strike on a train station which killed at least 50 people, including 5 children. More than 100 others were injured in the eastern city of Kramatorsk. The Kremlin denies any involvement in the attack. Boris Johnson says evidence of war crimes is mounting and Ukraine's allies are doing more to help the country.
Today I can announce that the UK will send a further £100 million worth of high-grade military equipment to Ukraine's armed forces, including more Starstreak anti-aircraft missiles, which fly at 3 times the speed of sound, another 800 anti-tank missiles, and precision munitions capable of lingering in the sky until directed to their target.
The European Union has announced further sweeping sanctions against Russia, including cutting its imports from Moscow by 10%. The EU has also frozen the assets of Vladimir Putin's 2 daughters, following in the footsteps of Britain and the US. On a visit to the Ukrainian town of Bucha, European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has promised to speed up Ukraine's EU membership application. But Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said although he's grateful, it still isn't enough.
They took territories and people. We will be able to bring back territories and will not be able to bring back people. And there will be a huge and fair responsibility for it. I am confident of that. That is why I am asking for help in the form of sanctions. They must be toughened. Otherwise, Russia does not want to listen to anything or anybody.
The Chancellor's wife has said she will pay UK tax on her worldwide income. The couple have come under increasing pressure after it emerged that Rishi Sunak's multi-millionaire wife, Akshata Murthy, holds non-dom status, which exempts her from paying tax on foreign income. It says Rishi Sunak admitted to holding a US green card while in office. He said it was returned after he sought guidance and that he followed all laws and paid taxes in full. And tennis champion Boris Becker has been found guilty of 4 charges under the Insolvency Act. The charges relate to his 2017 bankruptcy and include concealing debt. He was acquitted of a further 20 counts at Southwark Crown Court. He faces sentencing later this month. And Will Smith has been banned from attending the Oscars for 10 years after he slapped Chris Rock on stage. The incident happened when the comedian made a joke about Will's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. Less than an hour later, the actor gave a tearful speech as he accepted the Best Actor award for his role in King Richard. Hollywood's Film Academy says Will's behaviour was unacceptable and harmful. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan.
Many thanks to Bethany Elsey, who returns in an hour's time. It's Friday the 8th of April and you're watching and listening to Mark Dolan tonight. We've got a cracking 2 hours of Friday night entertainment for you. Big stories, big opinions, big debate and a few laughs along the way. My Mark Meets guests are bona fide showbiz legends, the iconic double act that are the Krankies. How did they get into the business? What makes their relationship tick? They are husband and wife, did you know? Also, what do they make of modern comedy and cancel culture? Live unmissable telly at 10 with the Krankies. As you know, we don't do boring, not on my show. I just won't have it. And tonight is no exception. In the big question, should we have calorie counts on restaurant menus? We'll hear from all sides on that one. And in the news agenda with my panel tonight, is Scottish independence now inevitable? Should offices have a dress code? And is it time for young people to smarten up a bit? Plus, are short men sexy? Tackling those big issues are my fantastic panel of the political commentator Alice Grant, journalist and broadcaster, always sexy, Andre Walker, and what can you say about Aidan McGee, the eye candy on tonight's show, sports presenter and writer. Thank you so much for the three of you to join us. We're going to have some great discussions tonight, but I want to hear from you as well throughout the show. So get your emails in between now and 11. As you know, it's the best part of my show when you get in touch. mark@gbnews.uk. So it's Friday night. Grab something cold and fizzy from the fridge and let's fire up the kettle and tear open the custard creams because we've got work to do. They think it's all over. It isn't now. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, has given an exclusive interview to GB News in which he refused to rule out future lockdowns. Take a listen.
I can't rule out something, Esther. I can't, say that we wouldn't be forced to do non-pharmaceutical interventions again of the kind that we did. I think it would be irresponsible of any leader, in any democracy, to say that they're going to rule out something that could save life.
Welcome to hell. This is why I lost faith with Boris early this year when the Mail on Sunday reported that it was in fact Lord Frost, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Rishi Sunak who stopped Boris from cancelling Christmas. The Mail wrote that he was about to cave in to doom-monger scientists until the government's COVID hawks, critics of COVID measures, including Chancellor Rishi Sunak, swooped in and changed his mind. That's right, it wasn't Boris that saved Christmas. This freedom-loving libertarian Prime Minister says one thing and does another, something to which his many wives and ex-girlfriends will no doubt attest. Remember the Prime Minister's irreversible ending of COVID measures? Well, threatening them in the future doesn't sound very irreversible to me. And he's even invoking the same apocalyptic language as science chiefs Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance, talking about possible worse future variants which may emerge. Do you not think we've got enough problems without worrying about viruses that don't even exist yet? And when did a virus ever get worse, by the way? They usually weaken in their potency over time. Omicron is famously milder than Delia Smith's recipe for chicken tikka masala. I don't want a Prime Minister that won't rule out future lockdowns. Because this wretched strategy, which has caused so much human, societal and economic damage, has patently failed. Show me a country in the world that didn't have lockdowns, mask mandates or vaccine passports that has had a disproportionately higher COVID death toll. Many fared better, in fact. There ought to be a difference in the graph between those two types of countries, the lockdown countries and the non-lockdown countries. There should be a difference in the graph, but there is none. Proof of lockdown effectiveness is up there with Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction, the Emperor's new clothes, Elton John's hair, and the simultaneous orgasm. In other words, strangely elusive. But the naked truth is that, in my view, lockdowns caused far more harm than good, which is why it's terrifying to hear the Prime Minister continue to peddle this anti-scientific madness. And why would he? He doesn't need to say any of these things. Previous experience would tell us that we're being softened up for more of these measures in the future. Now, I want to give Boris a chance, and I want him to prove me wrong. But if Boris Johnson wants to lock us down this winter add another £1 trillion to the national debt, and mask us up with those worthless face nappies all over again, then I want him out. I'll take anyone that won't repeat the terrible mistakes of the past. I'd rather have the Krankies in charge. And they're on the show later. I might ask them if they fancy the gig. In his interview with GBNews, Boris even dared to compare himself to Margaret Thatcher. He said that Margaret Thatcher would have approached COVID in exactly the same way. What a cheek to invoke her memory and legacy and put words in her mouth. Well, here was the public response. It sank like a lead balloon. No, she wouldn't have, says Maddie. She would have checked the data herself, questioned everything and not relied on others to make the decisions. There's no way Thatcher would have suffered the teachers' union or the civil servants not going back to work. How dare Boris Johnson compare himself to her? How about this one? Not a chance, says Mitre Gary. Margaret Thatcher would have seen through the charlatan advisers and asked them what the end result of destroying the country would be. That is, as now living with COVID, there was always no other way. How about this one? Romy says Margaret Thatcher had a chemistry degree from Oxford. She wouldn't have been controlled by Whitty and Sage. She would have drawn on a wider variety of scientific views and not subscribed to the cult-like the science crap. Also, she would never have taken away basic liberties. Or how about this one? Neil, no, she wouldn't. She would have sacked Sage on day one. And there you have it. Even if a new variant is 10 times worse, which let's pray it's not, doesn't there come a point where you accept that you can't borrow any more money, that you can't close down any more businesses, lock children in their homes, or ignore other diseases? Surely the economic and human price of saving the NHS, in inverted commas, which we didn't do, by the way, is no longer an option. The problem, it strikes me, is one of politics. The Prime Minister and this current generation of scientific advisers have signed up to the dogma originating from the Chinese Communist Party of masking the public and shutting down society. They have to keep this myth alive that these measures help in order to not show that they made a mistake. But how refreshing would it be if they did just that? A new politician or a new political party would never sign up for these measures knowing what we know now. But Boris will defend them, as he has done in this GBNews interview. Keir Starmer will defend them. Joe Biden will defend them. It's probably only when this lot have gone that the truth will out. Now, I can forgive and forget, given how little we knew about the virus 2 years ago. But it's now April 2022. And knowing what we know now, for Boris Johnson to threaten more of these illiberal socialist measures is deeply wrong and achieves a level of hypocrisy and double standards that I just can't stomach. What we needed to hear from the Prime Minister is that we just can't afford another lockdown and that their effectiveness is debatable at best. We needed to hear a plan for increasing hospital capacity in the NHS, which of course is going to be necessary this winter and for many winters to come. We needed a clear message that the war on COVID is over. We can't keep doing this, folks. The country's mental health is wrecked, the economy absolutely trashed. Look at inflation, look at the national debt, look at taxes. It's a total nightmare. All self-inflicted, all because of these lockdowns that Johnson won't rule out in the future. It's my view that of many eminent scientists, and of course it's the view of some of the greatest experts in the world, COVID cannot and never could be controlled. If we have another lockdown, how much more damage can we tolerate? Can we live with 15% inflation, for example? 20%? 30%? What about the national debt? It's currently over 2 trillion quid. Should we go to 3 trillion? 4 trillion? 5? Should we just bankrupt the nation and get ourselves to where Greece were in 2008 or Zimbabwe now? The Prime Minister must know that this is wrong because he and his colleagues spent lockdown partying like it was 1999, with literal suitcases of booze going into number 10 every 5 minutes. I actually don't care about Partygate. I'm not angry about it. I'm angry about the policy of lockdown and mask mandates, which all of those staffers at Number 10 clearly knew were pointless. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared getting together, unmasked, participating in quizzes, drinking games, and in the case of Matt Hancock, snogs in the corridor. I don't care about the political colour of our leaders, just that they exercise judgment, look at data, are flexible and make decisions in the national interest based upon the principles of a liberal democracy and a free society. We have to accept this virus, something that we should have done in March 2020. I honestly believe that if we had done nothing, we would be in better shape now. But I never advocated nothing. We should have focused on protecting the vulnerable whilst allowing healthy people to get on with their lives and contribute to the economy and, yes, get COVID and recover, as recommended by the Great Barrington Declaration, which was signed up to by some of the world's greatest scientists and medics. But even if we had done nothing, which was not my plan or anyone else's, the national debt would be tiny now, inflation would be low, and the economy would have billions of quid's worth of economic output sitting in the nation's bank accounts with which to protect the vulnerable and pay for the NHS. The only thing we got out of lockdown was this cost of living crisis, which will likely claim and damage more lives than COVID ever could. So now we've got a broken country, punch drunk from restrictions, on its uppers, skint, sad, divided and angry. In the end, I trust the judgment of you, the British people. I don't think the British public will put up with another winter of lockdowns and mask mandates. I always said the public were largely compliant with COVID measures in the first place because many were bribed by furlough and cheap loans, brainwashed by the press, and I pointed out that the actual bill for these measures hadn't come in yet. Well, here we are. The bill has come in now, and tragically, ordinary households cannot pay it. And the government can't really help either, because it has maxed out the nation's credit card in a diabolical overreaction to a virus which is nasty, yes, but mild and non-fatal to most. As the dreadful cost of living crisis worsens, the public, having felt the real-world consequences of these bonkers measures, will say no more. That's right, the public will say no more. To loosely paraphrase Mrs. Thatcher, Boris, you lock down if you want to. The nation's not returning. Reacting to the big stories of the day, including asking tonight's burning question, are short men sexy, is the rather tall columnist Andre Walker, political commentator Alice Grant, and sports broadcaster and writer Aidan McGee. Andre Walker, if I can start with you, did Boris's comments in this exclusive interview with GB News surprise you?
Well, I just think he got the wrong audience, didn't he, with GB News, without being rude. Look, I'm extremely concerned about this. I just feel like Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson have completely lost the plot. I mean, we are following the policies of communist China when it comes to lockdowns, when it comes to masks, and when it comes to placing people under house arrest for being ill. I just find the whole thing extraordinary. And the amount of money that's been tipped down the toilet, I've said it so many times on this show, Mark, but eat out to help out. We all got half-price pizzas at Wetherspoons, and then they shut the pubs anyway. You might as well have taken a blowtorch to several £billion. I find the whole thing just sickeningly irresponsible, and the fact that Boris won't rule out a lockdown is damaging in of itself. And let me explain why. Because people who are planning holidays, people who are planning investment in their business, people who are planning to, I don't know, make some alterations to the house, can't do any of those things because they can't be assured that they won't be banned from coming back to the country, banned from going to work, or unable to earn. It's a disaster.
Yes, Alice Grant, I can see you clearing your throat there. I hope it's not a touch of Omicron.
No, but as you were saying, Mark, I think this is deeply irresponsible of Boris. We're already British households are facing a crisis in the cost of living. And how many times over the last 2 years have we been promised our freedoms would return, our civil liberties, if we obeyed? How many more times is Boris going to keep using these very abusive tactics on the British public, trying to condition us into accepting lockdowns because of this false science, this kind of obsession with trying to control the British public through these measures, which obviously, as we've seen, do not at all contain COVID? I mean, it's unbelievable, I think, and I hope it angers the British public, because I don't think we should stand for this any longer. I mean, this is ridiculous now, especially when you take into account the geopolitical situation. We have far more pressing issues to deal with right now than COVID. And fuel costs are rising. Soon, British households will probably not even be able to afford to eat. This will affect many of the poorest households, the most vulnerable in our society. If Boris truly cared about the British people, he wouldn't be going on television and spouting this nonsense. I mean, who does he think he is, comparing himself to Margaret Thatcher? She was a scientist. She had a brain of a scientist, and none of this is at all scientific. And it's just, yeah.
Aidan McGee, do you think the public would tolerate future restrictions such as a winter lockdown?
I think the attitude, Mark, would be very different now. You have to remember that neither ourselves nor the politicians really knew what we were dealing with almost 2 years ago to the day. They've been through it. I can only speak from my personal account. I did everything that the government asked me to do. I didn't go out. I lived a hermit lifestyle. I did work remotely. My 87-year-old father was already vulnerable with Alzheimer's. I cared for him in the final months of his life. It rips me apart that he spent the last few months of his life living a very sheltered existence. He couldn't go to church, which was very important to him. He used to go to church 4 times a week. I couldn't take him for his haircut. I couldn't take him for his Turkish shave that he used to have. I couldn't take him to get his nails done or anything like that because of the restrictions in place. That didn't seem to me a fitting way for somebody to end their life. He died of COVID eventually in January 2021. So it hurts me to think that that very dark period of my life, possibly even the darkest period I ever had, and I'm 44 years old, that hurts me to think I could possibly go back to that. And I don't think I would be alone in thinking that either. I think that a lot of people who, I'm not saying I was the only one who suffered, we all did. I think the appetite to go back for that would be very, very low indeed. Also, there's the issue of the numbers. How many lockdowns can we afford? Do we go into lockdown every time we have a variant, especially a variant that we don't even recognise? We all panicked about the most recent variant. It wasn't even very harmful. So I think there has to be a degree of responsibility about this from our political classes. And I also think that Boris Johnson, we know he loves spending money. There were plenty of useless vanity projects he got involved with when he was the Mayor of London. He loves spending now. It's a little bit like decisions, like I cover football, and I know that Sepp Blatter, the FIFA president, made the decisions for Qatar to hold the World Cup 12 years ago, knowing that 12 years down the line, he'll have left the scene, he'll be on to a different phase of his life, leaving the current generation of footballers to deal with the upshot of having the ridiculous situation of having a World Cup in Qatar. It's not much different now. Boris Johnson is making decisions and borrowing money that he will not be held accountable for in 10 years' time. And he knows that. He'll be off the scene, he'll be charging 100 grand for a lecture by then, and goodness knows where the rest of us will be.
Andre Walker, you are an astute political commentator. Why has the Prime Minister made these remarks?
Because I think he was rattled when he fell ill with coronavirus himself. He's never had his mojo since then. And, you know, people have lost their marbles. There was a brilliant article that I saw in a local paper in Nottingham, and I assume it ran in other places as well, where they said that there was a major concern now about a new variant of coronavirus that has no symptoms whatsoever and as a result is running wild within the population. And you think to yourself, no symptoms whatsoever. And they were saying we might need a lockdown to deal with this symptom-free COVID. But people have gone over the top. And one of the things that really, really upsets me, I went to the funeral a couple of weeks ago of a friend of mine who'd been in the parachute regiment, a dumpy company, so this is a hard guy. And really, you know, as a result of him not being able to do all the physical exercises that he normally enjoys doing, as a result of his business going down, he began just drinking very heavily. And it ultimately led to his untimely death. Now, of course, what the government will say is, well, the number of deaths increased this year. That's proof of what's going on with coronavirus. The irony is that for people like Whitty and Van Tam, Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, this guy whose life was ruined by the lockdown and drank himself to death will be proof their policy was right. And I find it offensive when we see young children having their education damaged. Believe me, the gap between the rich and the poor has got bigger because it's the crummy schools in Labour local authorities that weren't doing the schooling that they were supposed to do during the lockdown. The kids that are going to, I don't know, posh schools in Ascot, they were all getting their education. They believe now that there might be, you know, young children from working class backgrounds might over their lifetime be £100,000 worse off as a result of the lockdown. I find the whole thing offensive, and I think for a Conservative Prime Minister it's shameful.
I think you'll agree we're travelling first class with my panel tonight. They'll be back tackling some major issues of the day. But what do you think? Will the public tolerate future lockdowns? Will you? And why has Boris made this statement? Why did he even go there? Are we being softened up for future measures? If I was Prime Minister, I would rule out future lockdowns because it's 2 years on. We've seen the data. In my view, they don't work and cause a load of damage. But has the Prime Minister got a point that actually you cannot make a prediction like that? You cannot rule anything out if you want to save lives. What's your view? Mark at GBNews.uk. I especially want to hear from you if you back Boris in this instance and disagree with what I've had to say. So lots to get through. Don't forget the Krankies are my Mark Meets guest live at 10. But next in the big question, is it the nanny state gone mad to have calorie counts on restaurant menus? We'll discuss that from multiple points of view. And here's the thing. They don't agree. It's all about opinions. Obviously, that's what this show is all about. Once again, the email is mark at gbnews.uk. I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Big reaction to my big opinion monologue. Why has Boris Johnson refused to rule out future lockdowns? Gary says, "Dear Mark, Boris doesn't want to let go of his COVID powers. Let's hope May's election results suffer him a blow to make him quiver. The electorate are the boss." How about this from Richard? "Dear Mark, if Boris dares bring in any more lockdowns, that will be the end of the Tories' election chances ever again. He's just saying this because he has become popular again on the back of the Ukraine war." How about this? Margaret, "Dear Mark, a big fat no to future lockdowns. They can all get stuffed. We're all suffering now with the biggest financial mess we've ever seen. Shame on them all. PS, love your show." Well, look, Margaret, brilliant to have you on board. Edith, "Mark, Boris didn't do lockdown to save lives. He did it to save the NHS. How many people who were put on the statistics of COVID deaths actually died of COVID?" And so they continue. How about this from Chris? "Dear Mark, I think I had COVID in March or February 2020, followed by long COVID. Was unable to know for sure as I'm not a member of the Gove family. It was not nice, but I would never have locked down for it. And as for Thatcher, I was not a fan, yet whatever you think of her, she did what she said, and she always did what she said she planned to do." Thank you so much for that, Chris, and I hope you've made a recovery from long COVID. How about this finally from Sean? Hello, Mark. Lockdown is required if the situation is severe. However, lockdown is not good for well-being. So you have some points there. A leader should strike a balance. Sean, thank you for that. More of your emails coming shortly, mark@gbnews.uk. It's time now for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story from opposing points of view. As of this week, restaurants, cafes and takeaways with more than 250 staff must print how many calories are in meals on their menus, websites and on delivery platforms. The new rule is part of government plans to tackle obesity by helping people to make healthier choices. Some restaurants fear it will increase their costs, while an eating disorder charity says it could continue to contribute to harmful thoughts and behaviours around food for those suffering from eating disorders. Well, to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Derek Connolly, consultant interventional cardiologist, Emily Carver, head of media at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Tam Fry, head spokesperson for the National Obesity Forum, and last but not least, Steve Miller, who is a top weight loss coach. If I could start with you, Dr. Connolly, do you think that calories on menus is the way to go?
Well, we've had them for years in many restaurants, and many countries around the world already have it. If you pick up your sandwich at lunchtime, it's already there. And of course, that doesn't stop me buying one sandwich or another, but it informs the population. And this is a democracy. People need to have the knowledge. Now, remember, obesity is increasing. And if we look at, for instance, the United States, they're ahead of us. They're showing that obesity is resulting in a large amount of cardiovascular death. And in 2020, more people died of cardiovascular death, according to CDC, in the United States than died of COVID. So it is a pandemic and it won't be going away. So anything that helps will be good.
Emily Carver, this is just public information. You know what you're eating. It tells you how many calories are in it, and you can make the right choices.
Yeah, I mean, in restaurants at the moment, the seller, the chef knows more about the product than you do. Now in these restaurants, you'll know your calories. But where I'd pick up your last contributor, I'd say, where is the evidence that this will have any impact on our waistlines at all? You know, this was tried out in New York City in 2004. So that was a good while ago now. And they found that it had literally no impact on people's choices at all. So this is just the public health lobby, once again, just wanting to do something and without looking at the costs benefit analysis of this kind of move. You know, this is quite easy for Burger King, it's quite easy for the Starbucks of this world because they have set menus that are always the same. They don't change very regularly. They have lots and lots of money at hand to spend on compliance and regulations and so on. But for smaller businesses, this is pretty difficult. Businesses that have menus that change frequently, this isn't harmless. This is going to have costs. And then there's also the mental health impact on those who do suffer from eating disorders, which I know from friends, this can be a massive trigger for people.
Yes, but is there any downside to providing customers with the information about what they're eating, Emily?
Well, no, I think I personally don't mind seeing the calorie count on my menu. But going to a restaurant has traditionally been something that you enjoy and you like, and you're not thinking always about your waistline when you go to a restaurant. It's a treat for most people. This makes it a bit of a miserable experience for some people. And also, you know, why do we need a regulator and the government to get involved with this? You know, businesses do their own market research. If they have clientele that want this information, they can then do this on a voluntary basis. You know, restaurants have been doing it for years. Lots of chains have been. They have this information free on their website. If you want to check in advance, you can. But putting it on the menu just seems like nannying gone mad. And I think they haven't thought through the unintended consequences.
Tam Fry, you're the head spokesperson for the National Obesity Forum. Does Emily Carver have a point that there's no evidence that calories on menus makes a blind bit of difference?
Well, she's wrong. Right from the word go in 2010, particularly when it was introduced in New York, there was evidence, admittedly, and it was not great, the effect of this ruling, but it certainly showed that about 100 calories a meal was the average that people went down. And 100 calories every time you go to a restaurant over the year amounts to quite a lot. What I looked for immediately once the Americans had put it into New York was to get the reaction from the eating disorders people, because they said that this is going to be pejorative. And the eating disorders people in the United Kingdom said, I tell you what you do, you go to a restaurant, you decide that you're going to have something to eat and enjoy yourself, and you just eat what you want. And if you don't want to look at the calorie count, you don't look at it. And if you want to look at it, then you do. What is so important, as you have pointed out, is that the customer gets the information. We spend a lot of our time now purchasing food where we're told exactly how much fat and salt and sugar there is in any product. And everybody accepts that. And either they look at it and ignore it, or they look at it and pay attention to it. And that can only be for the good. There are so many products now which are being sold, which are, shall we say, pizzas at 12,000 calories a dish, which are enormously overweight. And nobody needs to have a pizza that size. If you go into a restaurant, you see that there are pizzas, one at 1,000 calories, one at 800, one at 600. You can then figure out, am I going to splash out and eat like a pig, or am I going to delicately pick my way through a 600-calorie pizza? The information is there. The choice is yours. You are responsible for everything that you put in your mouth. If you don't have that information, you have nothing to go on.
Although Steve Miller, weight loss coach, are calories not a red herring, given the fact that many in the low-carb community believe it's about body chemistry, it's about the certain types of food that cause you to store fat, which would be carbohydrates and sugar, rather than calories per se?
The first thing I want to say is I think it's the first time I've ever agreed with Tam Fry, and I think you're speaking sense tonight, I have to say. We have 66% of people in this country that are either overweight or they are obese. We are talking about giving people a tool. I think the points that have been raised in terms of its effectiveness are worth listening to, because I think it will help some people. It won't help everybody. The calories are not in your face. They're in brackets. They're in very small print. And it is a tool to help people to move forward. Coming back to your question, Mark, I say stop making it complicated. We are great in this country about making weight loss really complex, where in fact we should be just talking about calorie deficit and shutting up actually about other things that make people so confused when they're trying to lose weight. And coming now on to eating disorders, we have to put our arm around people that are struggling with obesity. We have to put our arm around people struggling with eating disorders. But it is around 2% of the nation that struggle with eating disorders. And when we talk about eating disorders, let's not patronize people with eating disorders, because actually a lot of people with eating disorders get very angry when they hear this sort of discussion, because actually eating disorders can be triggered from socialization, trauma. Talking about calories on a menu actually is very, for many people, quite insulting. So I think we keep it simple. I think this is a tool. I think it could be a blunt one for many people, but it's a tool in the box that can help our nation begin to slim down, because let's face it, we are getting fatter.
Dr. Derek Connolly, how much of a threat is the obesity to the ongoing viability of our National Health Service?
Well, you're right. This is a major factor. And it's not just heart disease, it's hip replacements. It's the fact that if you're unfit, you might have to retire early. So this is something that can affect the economy of the country, and particularly the NHS. And I agree entirely that this is something, it's not just calories, you have to eat healthily, but at the end of the day, what puts on weight is calories, and the public need to understand that.
Emily Carver, do you think this measure is here to stay? And do you think that measures will get even more punitive, such as a tax on unhealthy food or even a ban on certain ingredients?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we see this with the public health lobby. They ask for one thing and then there's the slippery slope effect. It always moves on. Now it's businesses that have 250 employees. That will soon be smaller businesses. There'll be more information that these restaurants have to compile and then put down on these menus. Why stop at calories? Why not the salt, the sugar, the fat, the carbohydrates, everything that makes a trip to a restaurant where you don't want to necessarily think about every single calorie that you're putting in your mouth. And it will just go from there. We've seen it when it comes to minimum unit pricing. We've seen it when it comes to, proposals for outdoor smoking bans. I'm not sure why people think they have the right to dictate other people's choices for them. It does not make you a better person if you choose a 400-calorie salad to someone who chose a pizza. People are different. And you know what? The public health lobby, what did they advocate? They advocated lockdowns. What happened under lockdown? People got fatter. People put on weight. People put on huge amounts of weight during that lockdown. And now what are we doing? We're punishing businesses and restaurants who had to close down during those lockdowns for serving food. And this is going to cost. It's not costless. And the benefits, no one's been able to measure what the benefits of these things will be. It's not going to have the blind bit of difference.
However, Emily Carver, we've got to do something, haven't we? At the moment, the cost to the NHS of obesity is estimated to be around 6 billion, but many will tell you it's far more than that already, especially if you take into account indirect symptoms like knee replacements for young people and the management of type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we have a problem with obesity in this country that's worsened over recent years. There isn't really a case study in the world that shows us a perfect system where somehow people have all got fitter as a result of government intervention, as a result of government policy. I think the best thing is education, and we've got that going on in the market. Businesses are, developing apps. They're developing, new nutrition information, classes for exercise, etc. We've got a huge industry that's all about getting fit and healthy. Then it's up to people to make choices.
But Emily, why not clobber the food giants who are selling us this crap?
Well, I think people should have a right to choose what they put in their body. If that means you're going to have a burger, then that's fine too. I agree with you giving people information. As I said before, I personally don't mind having the calorie count on the menu, but I think we have to stop pretending that these interventions are costless and that they'll make a difference at all to people's waistlines.
Steve Miller, briefly, you are the founder of a business called Fatnosis, Mindset and Motivational Weight Loss. Straight talking, ballsy weight loss with heart and humour. You've had a lot of success with your clients. How do we get slim?
Do you mean from a society perspective or as an individual?
Well, I mean, if there's anybody watching this show, you're a weight loss guru. Your website is yourweightlossmaster.co.uk. What is your approach?
I think there are three things we do. Firstly, as an individual, what we do is we start living. We don't diet. That's the worst thing to do, is to do rigid diets. We live 80-20, eating 80% healthily and 20% a bit of what we fancy. Secondly, we nourish our minds and create an aspiration within ourselves for a reason to get up in the morning and actually eat success rather than shoveling bacon sarnies in my mush. And then the third thing I do is I monitor that and self-motivate myself with this ongoing goal setting. And actually at times I have to get quite tough with myself. I mean, there's many other things we can do. I'm a big advocate of hypnosis, by the way, because it's great to sort of help program the mind. When it comes to society, though, we've got to get tougher. We've become so politically correct and frightened to even use the word fat now that actually, arguably, as a nation and as a culture, we are encouraging people to be obese. It now seems to be quite trendy to say that, okay, you're curvy. No, you're not. You are super obese. And that's dangerous.
Tam Fry, you are from the National Obesity Forum. You're very clear about the massive scale of our obesity problem in this country and in the Western world. How do we fix it?
Well, you used the word clobber just recently. And what happened in 2018 was a form of clobber. what the government said was to the drinks industry, if you continue to put the amount of sugar in your soft drinks that you are at the moment, we will fine you, or we will levy you. And what the drinks industry did said, we don't want to pay a lot of money to the government. Maybe we should do something about our drinks. So within 2 years, they had taken out something like 35% of sugar from all the drinks available in soft drinks in this country. They were clobbered, if you will, by a threat of a levy, which was quite high. They decided to take the other option, and they decided to take the sugar out of their product. What that should happen now is that should be extended to all the other foodstuffs and drinks. It won't be the same amount that is paid and at the same level, but it'll be the same concept. And businesses will start to look at what they're doing, take out the injurious ingredients, pay less to the government, and we will all benefit.
Emily Carver, you're shaking your head.
I'm only shaking my head because these ideas, they sound nice, they sound sensible in theory, but where is the evidence that telling businesses to take an amount of sugar out of their drink is having any direct impact on waistlines?
Emily, how can it not? Emily,
where is the evidence?
How can reducing sugar from Coca-Cola not make an impact on our waistlines?
Well, it's clearly not, is it, Mark?
Well, it might be all the other stuff we're consuming, but with sugary drinks no longer sugary, surely that's one problem eliminated.
But I don't really think so, because people could just drink more or get their sugar from elsewhere. I mean, you can't dictate to people what they eat. You can provide people with information and people have to make their decisions. The government can't control what people eat within their homes. And I think restaurants is just silly, because I think binge eaters are far more likely to overeat at home when they're in their own privacy. And that's somewhere where the government can't get to yet.
Dr. Connolly, finally, with the... Yes, go on.
Can I just say, Mark?
Steve, go for it.
I think Emily's actually got a very fair point there. And what I think you're saying, Emily, is that we as a nation need to actually get a bit of a grip and start taking personal responsibility for things. And it was actually, if my memory serves me well, the Institute of Economic Affairs that actually showed us that eating healthy is cheaper than eating junk food as well. And I think, so when it comes to personal responsibility, I actually support that argument, because actually in the United Kingdom, we as a nation are very, very poor. We love to blame everybody. We don't like taking personal responsibility. And I am probably the only weight loss so-called expert in the UK that has the balls to actually make that clear to people.
Final thoughts from you, Dr. Derek Connolly.
Well, I think we do have to do something. We don't want to end up like the United States, where heart disease and cancer are increasing because of obesity. And I think everything we do may well work, and it may not work. But if we don't try, we know where we're going. So I probably will be advantageous, but certainly the only measure. And as I need to inform the population what healthy meat eating is, what calorie control is, and of course, what exercise is.
Well, I couldn't agree more. If you want to find out more about Tam Fry's organisation, you'll find them at the nationalobesityforum.org.uk. My thanks to Tam Fry, who is their head spokesperson. Steve Miller is a weight loss guru. His website is yourweightlossmaster.co.uk. Google Fatnosis for more. My sincere thanks to a very good friend of the show as well, Emily Carver, head of media at the Institute of Economic Affairs, and a regular contributor to the show, Dr. Derek Connolly. Thank you so much for joining us as well, consultant interventional cardiologist. Well, what do you think? Is it acceptable to put calorie counts on menus, or is it the nanny state gone mad? We've got the results of our text poll. 26% of you say yes, it's acceptable to have calorie counts on a menu. 74% say you're not having it. You want to go to Wetherspoons on Curry Thursday and you want to enjoy yourself and not be assaulted by the calorie counts. Coming up, there's still time for you to get your questions in for Mark Meets. I'll be speaking to the Krankies. They're live at 10. But next, is Scottish independence now inevitable? See you in 2.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Tomorrow from 10 a.m, get set for a GB News exclusive interview with Prime Minister Boris Johnson as 2 of his most rebellious MPs put him on the spot. Brexit, COVID, and now the reality of war. How does the Prime Minister look back on the past 2 years? And what can he say about having been so close to death?
I then had a pretty groggy night and went down even lower.
An exclusive interview with Prime Minister Boris Johnson tomorrow from 10 a.m. on GB News.
Barry's not happy. Mark, when are we going to have everything done for us? We can control everything at home with a phone or an Alexa machine. Teach the kids at school about nutrition. Stop eating the crap that is on the shelves. The bigger the lie, the more the people believe it. The artificial sweeteners are as bad, if not worse, as sugar. Lastly, Alexa, wipe my arse, says Barry. There you go. Not pulling his punches. How about this from Gerald, who says the following. I'm just going to grab this one. Mark, rather than having sugar in Coca-Cola reduced by 35%, I would have preferred if they'd left it alone and tastier, and I drank 35% less. But that is a choice I was not given. Thank you for that, Gerald. More of your emails shortly. But let's crack on with our news agenda. In the company of my brilliant panel, columnist Andre Walker, political commentator Alice Grant, and sports broadcaster and writer Aidan McGee. According to the latest poll conducted by Survation, the SNP are on course for a decisive victory in the upcoming local elections. The poll predicts the SNP will win 44% of all first preference votes, followed by Labour on 23% and the Tories on 18%. Well, should the SNP come out on top, as predicted, does Scottish independence become inevitable? Andre Walker, if this happens in Scotland, Scotland will be a one-party state, won't it?
Yeah, but it's pretty much a one-party state now, and Nicola Sturgeon is determined to make people believe that Scottish independence is inevitable. I think that Scottish independence would be hugely damaging, not just to Scotland, but actually to Wales, England and Northern Ireland as well. I think the United Kingdom has been hugely successful. But we've got to remember something. You know, there was a referendum that was a sensible, debated referendum where the real issues got drawn out, and Scotland voted to remain part of the United Kingdom. There is an element here where the SNP SNP is the party of Scotland and seen as the best party to represent Scotland, but there is still a majority for unionism, and people are going to say, oh, well, the polls say there's a majority for leaving the United Kingdom, but actually, that was the case right through the referendum. I actually think independence is not inevitable as long as we make the case for the United Kingdom. I have to say, I think Scotland would be mad to leave the United Kingdom. I think it'd be terrible for England as well. But then again, I have to say, I'm not a patriot for England. I'm a patriot for the United Kingdom, which I think is fairly typical of English people.
Aidan McGee, it's often been said that a vote for the SNP is not necessarily a vote for independence.
Absolutely right. I mean, you have to remember the SNP were pretty strong in Scotland prior to the referendum in 2014, which, by the way, wasn't particularly close. Also, this is only a poll, Mark. You know, how often have polls been wrong, spectacularly wrong, in the last 10 years or so? We think about the Brexit referendum, we think about Scotland, which was predicted to be much closer, the Scottish referendum, or Indie Ref as we called it, back in 2014. So they're not really a true indication of voting intention on a national scale. It's just like, it's almost like the narrative they're spinning now because Scotland voted in favour, I think it was I can't remember what the numbers were, 67%, I think it was, to remain in the EU. They believe that was a reason to have a referendum again. Now, you can't keep having referendums every 5 years, every 10 years. It's also not in Nicola Sturgeon's gift to be able to say we are having a referendum. It needs approval from the British government. Much she dislikes that. Theresa May already told her that it's out of the question. And so it's a long, long way to go before she gets independence. And we all know as well that once it happens, it's not going to go back. So it's a kind of vote, a little bit like any referendum, really. You probably need to, if you're going to have it regularly, there needs to be an interval of around about 20 years, not 8 years as we've got just now.
Well, I wonder about that, Alice Grant, because with that level of a majority, which is unprecedented in British politics, surely Nicola Sturgeon would have the moral authority, the mandate to demand from Boris Johnson another referendum.
Well, we waited something like 45 years for our referendum to leave the European Union. Scotland voted very decisively in 2014, just recently, essentially, to keep this 300-year-old union. And so I think that vote should be respected. And Nicola Sturgeon, if she was a true Scottish patriot, wouldn't be advocating for such a ruinous and disastrous policy for Scotland and for the Scottish people, especially considering the economic integration with England is so strong. Even SNP economic advisors who sit on the Scottish economic councils have said that this would be extremely disastrous for Scotland economically, and I'm afraid they just can't afford it.
Aidan McGee, what about this as a policy? If you're confident, as Alice and Andre are, that the Scots would remain, why not lance the boil with another referendum and destroy the idea of Scottish nationalism once and for all?
Well, it's not as simple as that. Otherwise, if it happens again and we get the same numbers voting in favour of remaining part of the Union as we had back in September 2014, well, how more times do we have to do it? Do we do it again in eight times? There needs to be something written in the Constitution which says we have a vote every 20 years. That's fine. I've always said if Scotland wants to leave, then it should be allowed to leave and we should support it in doing so. I'm not necessarily saying that I think it'd be a good thing either for Scotland itself or the rest of the Union, as Andre says, but I do think that if one country wants to break away, just as Britain wanted to break away from the EU, it should be allowed to do that. I just don't think the vote would go in favour of Scotland breaking away now anyway. I don't think enough has changed in the last 8 years, but I do think there's a case for a vote happening every 20 years.
Lots more from Andre Walker, Alice Grant and Aidan McGee in the second hour, plus the Krankies, who are live in 2 minutes' time. Can't wait for that. Get your questions in, Mark at gbnews.uk. A really busy final hour of the show. See you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Really busy last hour of the show. In the news agenda with my panel, is dressing smart making a comeback? Is it time for young people to smarten up as they go back into the office? And should companies have a dress code in the office? What do you think about that? We'll discuss that very shortly. Also, we'll bring reaction to the news that trans female cyclists have been banned from competing against biological women. Is this a turning point in the culture wars? We'll discuss that. Plus, another great British game show. Are short men sexy? That's another big question, which is the theme of tonight's game show. So all of that to come. But don't forget, on the other side of these headlines, we meet the Krankies. They're live at 2 minutes past 10. But first, the headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Thanks, Mark. I am Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The UK is sending a further £100 million worth of high-grade military equipment to Ukraine's armed forces. It follows a rocket strike on a train station which killed at least 50 people, including 5 children. More than 100 others were injured in the eastern city of Kramatorsk. The Kremlin denies any involvement in the attack. The European Union has announced further sweeping sanctions against Russia, including cutting its imports from Moscow by 10%. The EU has also frozen the assets of Vladimir Putin's 2 daughters, following in the footsteps of Britain and the US. On a visit to the Ukrainian town of Bucha, European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has promised to speed up Ukraine's EU membership application. But Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said although he's grateful, it still isn't enough.
They took territories and people. We will be able to bring back territories and will not be able to bring back people, and there will be a huge and fair responsibility for it. I am confident of that. That is why I am asking for a help in the form of sanctions. They must be toughened, otherwise Russia does not want to listen to anything or anybody.
The Chancellor's wife has said she will pay UK tax on her worldwide income. The couple have come under increasing pressure after it emerged that Rishi Sunak's multi-millionaire wife, Akshata Murthy, holds non-dom status, which exempts her from paying tax on foreign income. It's as Rishi Sunak admitted to holding a US green card while in office. He said it was returned after he sought guidance and that he followed all laws and paid taxes in full. And the Prime Minister has said he was not put on a ventilator when he contracted COVID-19 2 years ago. In an exclusive interview with GB News, Boris Johnson explained how unwell he felt when he was admitted to hospital with the virus.
For some reason, they couldn't seem to get, meet my oxygen levels to get up to the levels that they wanted. And you should be roughly sort of 94% or above 94% oxygenation of the blood, and I think when I went in, I was in the 80s somewhere.
Boris Johnson was speaking with Conservative MPs Esther McVey and Philip Davies there. You can watch the interview in full on Saturday's Selection tomorrow at 10 a.m. on GB News. And And Will Smith has been banned from attending the Oscars for 10 years after he slapped Chris Rock on stage. The incident happened when the comedian made a joke about Will's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. Less than an hour later, the actor gave a tearful speech as he accepted the Best Actor award for his role in King Richard. Hollywood's Film Academy says Will Smith's behaviour was unacceptable and harmful. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Lots of emails coming in. This from Declan, who says, Mark, your panel is AAA plus. Andre, Aidan and Alice. Small batteries, but big energy. Well, my panel will return shortly, answering some of the big topics of our news agenda, including this one. Should offices have a dress code? And is it time for young people to smarten up again? We'll discuss that very, very shortly. Plus, we've got another great British game show as well. But let's catch up on a couple of emails before we meet the Krankies. Now, this from Julian in regards to Scottish independence. Is it inevitable? Well, Julian says, Mark, no way should Scotland be independent. As if they took their fair share of the national debt, their GDP couldn't even pay the interest on the debt. And what currency would they use? On fat and how we actually tackle our bulging waistlines, George says, Dear Mark, body fat is made from glucose. Sugar contains 50% glucose, starch is 98%. Where does calorie counting come into this? That's from George. How about this, Nicholas? Hi, Mark. Once again, the minority are ruling the majority. What about people who aren't obese, who like a can of full-fat pop and don't like the taste of artificial sweeteners? Yes, make lower sugar drinks, but keep the original as an alternative. I recently spent 6 hours in A&E. Luckily, nothing serious. Glad to hear that, Nick. And the majority of the nursing staff were overweight. People have to die of something. Everyone knows pizzas are fattening and salads aren't. Let people make their own mind up. How about this? Robert says, Dear Mark, I'm 73 and yo-yo dieted for 63 years. I then read Gary Taubes' book, What Makes Us Fat and What to Do About It. I lost 4 stone and have kept it off. Calories are secondary. It's what you eat that counts, not how much. Low carb, medium fat is the answer. It works. That's from Bob in Spain. Well, I've got to say, Bob, I cut the carbohydrates, which is sugar, rice, potatoes, pasta, beer, that sort of stuff, and lost 3 stone. So I'm no expert on this, but from personal experience, cutting the carbs really helped me. If you're having trouble, consult your GP and do see what you can do about it, because clearly it's optimum if you can to tackle your waistline. How about this? Roy says, Hi, Mark, why don't we have signs on restaurants saying, if you're overweight, don't come in, go for a run? Wow, pretty harsh stuff. Responding to my big opinion monologue about why Boris Johnson can't rule out future lockdowns, this from Stephen. Dear Mark, hi Mark, top monologue as usual. And I say I agree with Boris completely. Parliament and all MPs should be locked down and held accountable for the financial loss, particularly the 5 billion written off to fraudulent claims and the millions more wasted on PPE orders given to their friends and families. All part of the VIP setup. JC says, how can Johnson forget he didn't even follow lockdowns himself? He is still being investigated. I won't lock down for him. He is a selfish, lying hypocrite. Well, look, do keep those emails coming in. And if you back what the Prime Minister has had to say in an exclusive interview with GB News, then do let me know, Mark at gbnews.uk. Is he within his rights to reserve the ability to lock the country down once again? It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sport, entertainment, business and beyond. And they don't get much bigger than the iconic comedy double act of the Krankies, who dominated TV entertainment in the 80s, starring in their own television shows and even enjoying a pop career. Comprised of husband and wife team Jeanette and Ian Tuff as the Krankies, they portray schoolboy, wee Jimmy Krankie, played by Jeanette, and the paternal figure of Ian Krankie, played, of course, by Ian. Brilliant stuff. Of course, in their double act, they play other characters as well. Their career started on the comedy circuit in the 70s, culminating in a career-changing moment, appearing on the Royal Variety Performance in 1978. And following their success in the 80s and early 90s, they went on to star in Absolutely Fabulous and are still an in-demand live comedy act and a fixture on the pantomime circuit. So what's next for this legendary double act with whom so many of us grew up? I'm delighted to say that the Krankies join me now. Hi, Jeanette. Hi, Ian.
Hello. Hello, Mark. Nice to see you.
Listen, it's a
I've been
privilege.
watching you for weeks.
Have you really?
I've been in Australia. Yeah,
You've been watching the show.
Yes, especially you. At the weekends, because I got it on my iPad in Australia, because we got stuck in Australia for 2 years. Couldn't get back. They locked us in.
We were only there for 2-3 months.
Terrible. Well, I'm very honoured that you've been watching the show. Why have you been watching us rather than other channels?
Well, I think it's a pretty obvious reason. I don't like left-wing broadcasters. BBC. Well, I found you easier to pick up, funnily enough, through my iPad. I used a little gadget, of course, which I'm not supposed to use, I don't think. A VPN, is it a VP?
Yes,
VPN.
VPN.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm
Yeah, so
delighted that you're watching the show, and I'm hugely honoured that you are, because you have entertained myself and millions in this country. How did your comedy partnership come about?
Well, I used to work in the theatre as an electrician back in the 1960s, and Jeanette was in a pantomime called The World of Widow Cranky, and she was a comedy feed and little juvenile, well, not a juvenile, you were 18.
I was working in an office as well.
Yeah, you were the shorthand typist, the original.
I was the original shorthand typist.
And we met up, and we met up actually on the skiing, on the Sunday when we went skiing in Glenshee. And then we started going out together. And then Jeanette was going to the King's in Edinburgh for the 8:05 show, and I was going to Butlins to try and be a comedian. And
you're still trying.
Thank you. And the Dallas boys, which your older viewers will remember, said to us, "Why don't the two of you get an act together?" So we put a song and dance act together. Well, I couldn't dance, and Jeanette wasn't too good at the singing, so we ended up doing comedy. Well, I don't know we ended up. That took a bit of time.
Yeah.
Oh, there we are. That's 1973.
Was it?
Yeah, that's 1973. Oh my goodness.
Oh God, he's still throwing me about.
No, not now.
I'm glad to hear it, Jeanette. But I'm glad the spark is still there. Jeanette, what are your emotions when you watch that footage from the early 70s?
Oh, just memories.
My hair.
Well, we had lovely years. We had lovely years, and we've done all sorts of work, different types of work.
That was the wheel tappers and shunters back in those days, which was I mean, today I don't think you put half the material out. It's not politically correct, but it was huge. I mean, I think they got something like 80, 90 million viewers in those days. Colossal. And Bernard Manning ran it, who wouldn't be allowed on your television today.
What do you make of, Ian, what do you make of modern comedy and the so-called cancel culture where people lose their gigs because of an inappropriate joke?
I think that's appalling. You know, there should be no curbs on comedy. You should be able to say what you want. And if you offend somebody, well, they've been offended. They can say it, but why should you be stopped? Everybody's right to be offended. Everybody has that right to be offended and to offend, I suppose. But, I mean, we never ever worked any material like that. However, we did, looking back, work at stuff that material that wouldn't be accepted today based on just, well, I suppose, wokeism, as you call it. Yeah. You know, I mean, you can't mention certain things. Like we do a joke years ago about, I'd asked Jimmy, how many kids are in your family? And she'd say, 12. Oh no, there's after the 11th one, my mum didn't want any more. Oh, but she had another one, we kept them. And I said, why is that?
Well, it's the only black one we've got.
Now,
it's great fun, you can chalk on them and everything. You couldn't get away with that now.
No, you would be done for that. Yeah, we would work that in Birmingham, Wolverhampton, with a mixed audience, and they'd be on the floor. I think it was the liberal sort of lefties that decided for other people what they should laugh at. And, you know, we did a Chinese restaurant sketch, which breaks all the rules, but we worked that in Australia and the second house on a Saturday night where we worked was all Vietnamese and Chinese, and they were in convulsions. They thought it was hysterical that we were doing it. So it's today. I wouldn't like to be starting out today. You know, you'd have to be so careful. Now,
well, of course, we live in very sensitive times. Apologies to anyone offended by that joke, but the bottom line is comedians are now on tenterhooks. I mean, could you really do what you do these days, guys?
I think it would have to be a different material. I mean, first and foremost, Jeanette dressing up as a wee boy, that would likely cause offence because she's a woman, and me dressing up in pantomime as a woman would cause offence. And our television shows, I dressed up as his auntie, his mother, all sorts. And that's Jeanette.
That's me as Susan Boyle.
So I suppose they would be offended at that as well.
Tell me about the Susan Boyle sketch.
Susan Boyle loved that.
Jeanette, how did the Susan Boyle come about?
Oh, it was just I did different characters every year in the pantos because we were in Glasgow for so long. You know, even the Pavilion before we were at the SEC, and we had to find new characters all the time. So I was everybody from
Miley Cyrus,
Wrecking Ball to
yeah, you're everybody, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you had to come up with a new character. She was current at the time, and she came to the pantomime in Glasgow. She loved it, but her sister didn't.
That's interesting.
There you are. Somebody else took the offence.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Jeanette, do you ever get fed up with being typecast in the schoolboy character? Because you play lots of different characters.
Yeah, I do. I did. And I won't be anymore because I'm retired.
Well, not retired yet.
Retired from showbiz that way, you know, for panto, things like that. I can't be thrown about anymore at 75.
No. Also,
well, you look incredible for 75, Jeanette. But yeah, was it ever an albatross round your neck, that particular character of wee Jimmy Krankie?
No, not unless we got chairs that weren't right.
No, did you think, well, I'm only known for this?
No,
not really.
Because we did different characters. Yeah. I just didn't do Jimmy all the time, you know.
In the TV series, you played their sister, the grandmother. So you're not really, you know.
No, and I remember.
That character was so iconic that it was so strong. The Jimmy character, you just had to go with it. I mean, Jeanette's Jimmy Krankie's hat was in the Victoria and Albert Museum on the exhibition, along with Chapman's stick, Tommy Cooper's hat, and Morecambe's Wise's glasses, on icons of comedy. So that shows you how Jimmy registered in Britain, and I suppose still does.
You clearly have a very happy marriage as well. Was it ever a strain on the relationship, your showbiz career?
Not really.
No, not really. No, we're always together. I mean, we never really did things separately, you know.
Not till the end when you started maybe doing more French and Saunders things, but I used to come to stay in the posh hotels they put you up in anyway. No, there was never. We were too busy. I mean, we never stopped. I think in it. And
it was such a mixture of show business because there was television, there was summer seasons, there was pantos, there was travelling, touring, and you know, everything. So you weren't in the one place all the time, you know. Some towns were hard.
Yeah.
So speaking about being stuck in one place, you went to Australia. You were intending only to go for a short while, and you got stuck because of COVID.
Yes, Australia locked down, nobody in, nobody out for about 18 months. Well, after the 18 months was I thought, well, it's winter now in Britain, we'll just stay, and we stayed till March there.
Yeah.
So,
but we've got a house there anyway, so it doesn't matter, you know. We've had a place there for 22 years. 22 years. So.
And what did you make of the COVID measures, Ian, in Australia, which has been described by some as zero COVID?
Yes, well, they started that policy at the beginning, but they then realised it wasn't possible, although New Zealand still did. They were good. The ridiculous thing was there was no human touch to it at all. Like our friend who lives in Sydney, her mother was very ill in Queensland, and eventually she died. They wouldn't let her go to the funeral. At the same time, after she died, the cousin died, they wouldn't let her go. But then eventually they said, well, you can go and visit the grave. which was ridiculous. There was a little boy in where we live in Tweed Heads, or that area, and Coolangatta, it's the twin towns, the border between Queensland and New South Wales runs through there. This kid was dying, but he was in the hospital in Queensland. The mum and dad were not allowed to go and see him. There was an outcry was horrendous. I think eventually somebody made them, took them. But that's how crazy they got. What would you say? Terrified of it, more or less.
Yeah, there was a border in the middle of the town.
Yeah, but when they opened the clubs, they'd let you go into the clubs. You could dance, but you had to wear a mask. But when you sat down for your dinner, it was crazy. They were making the rules up as they were going along. But as you know, I think there was about 30,000 Australians couldn't get home. Just couldn't get home, which was weird. I mean, they've got a worse outbreak now because once they opened up, it came back. But at least they had actually vaccinated the majority of the population.
Yeah.
Or the majority that wanted to be vaccinated.
We were looked after by the medical people.
Oh, wonderful medicine.
Wonderful medical people.
But there was every Sunday in our town there was a rally, there was a protest every Sunday. And the police were there with the horses and that and everything. And Australians have never seen anything like this before. As you know, they're such a laid-back, don't care. Sort of, people. They couldn't believe there was military. We had military on the borders, as well as police.
And of course, Jeanette, you are both legendary Scottish entertainers. What do you make of Nicola Sturgeon? And also, are you up for an independent Scotland?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Well, Jeanette's the one that they call her the little cranky. You know that, don't you?
They call Nicola Sturgeon little cranky.
Yeah, what do you think about Jeanette? Those comparisons between yourself and Sturgeon. Are you flattered or horrified?
You don't mind.
Well, I don't care.
She might be horrified.
I'm getting my name mentioned all the time, so I don't really care.
No,
but you're not that keen on independence. Then it's fair to say.
No,
not at all.
It's quite ridiculous.
No.
Quite ridiculous. In fact, I think when you were on, I was watching that. I think you would find. I know the polls say this and that, but the actual people, my brother and relations, they'll not come out and say they're for the United Kingdom because you'll get your windows broken, you'll get your car smashed.
Yeah.
So that's why when they went for the last referendum, they thought they were going to walk it. But the majority came out and went, no, I'll put my vote. I wanted to tell you what I'm voting, but I'm going to vote. That's the trouble, you see. It's I don't. Plus, I suppose you've seen the farce about the ferries.
Yeah.
69 million. It's now up to 269 million. How are they going to run a country if they can't even make a boat?
You've got to worry, haven't you? It sounds more like a comedy routine. And also, what about you two back in the day? Because you were comedy stars, but you behaved a bit more like rock and rollers, didn't you?
Well, just one or two tours. That would be what the early 80s when we were in our 30s.
Yeah.
We should call it your naughty 30s, I suppose. Yeah. But that was blown out of proportion. It was a Scottish, again, a BBC blinking news reporter that exaggerated everything,
Well, I think you were on tour, Jeanette.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were dancers on the show, so we weren't.
I never touched them.
We weren't holier than godlier, but
we had wild parties. I'll just put it that way.
Well, that's right. You had parties. You had a few drinks. I believe you were quoted as saying, "Status Quo," the rock band, lent us their coach once, and when we gave it back, they said, "Blinking heck, this is worse than if we'd lent it to a rock show, and this was for a kids' show."
That's right. Yeah, but we were actually went in at that. We were using our own car at the time, so it was my band and the supporting acts and the dancers that were on that bus that turned it upside down. It was a brand new bus, and they said you can have it, try it, see what it's like.
And what about all the swinging stuff? Because you're clearly in a very happy, committed marriage. But was it an open relationship at one point?
No, not at all. There was no swinging at all. No. That's what I'm saying about the BBC lady. Yeah. She just exaggerated. She exaggerated the parties. What we did say is everybody would get in and out of each other's rooms in those parties. So she said, "Oh, they're swinging." But I mean, you're in the business. I've been, I think, still in the business, obviously. You know what show business was like, especially in the 80s.
And listen, what makes that relationship work so well? Because you're an unbelievable partnership on stage and on camera. But how does the relationship tick in real life? Who's in charge?
Oh,
Him.
Well, after 53 years of marriage, he's your best pal, his best friend. It's your right hand. I mean, we don't like to think at all about what would happen if it happens to one of us, which is wrong, likely, but we've been so close together. Also, we make each other laugh. We go up every morning and laugh. Well, we don't go up and start laughing, but we just have a funny day. You know, we're not down people.
And we like the same type of friends.
Yes, yeah.
We don't, I don't have friends that I say to him, I don't like him or I don't like her. No. And he's the same with me, you know.
And we have the same interests. Although we don't do it so much. We used to play a lot of golf together. We'd cycle together.
Yeah.
We seem to do everything together, which a modern couple would tell you that's wrong. You should have your own lives, but I don't think so. Not wrong.
I stopped playing golf and played 9 holes and failed in 5.
Yeah. Look, I can speak on behalf of millions to say that you were such an entertaining double act. You gave me so much pleasure growing up as a child and a teenager. You're unbelievable performers. The jokes were fantastic. Let's bring my panel in if I can, Ian and Jeanette. Delighted to have Alice Grant, Andre Walker and Aidan McGee. Aidan, are you of the right vintage to know all about the Krankies?
Just about, yeah, exactly. I mean, I probably remember them more late 80s, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a question for both Ian and Jeanette, actually, and they've kind of touched on it earlier on, but do you fear for the future, both of you, of comedy? We're seeing stand-up acts and even sitcoms being cancelled, retrospectively even. Is there even going to be any leeway in future, any platform for comics to do what they do, which sometimes involves offending people?
Yeah, well, I think you'll find that comedy will go underground, as did certain styles of music, because they'll find an audience. The hard comics, the real coarse ones will find... I mean, take Chubby Brown, who's, by the way, a lovely man, and Jeff, who's just passed away. They were known as the Blue Filthy Comics. They sold more DVDs and played to more people than all today's new comics. But a lot of the new people found them terribly offensive. I never found it offensive. I mean, some of the gags were hysterical. The language was bad, maybe, but and they maybe were what would you say, anti this and anti that. But they had an audience. So how do you say they were wrong? You know, I watched them in Blackpool, Chubby, pack 3,000 seats every night in the Opera House, and they were howling at him. And you think, well, yeah, he's banned from Sheffield. He's banned because he said certain things. So, yeah, I think we've got to kick it into touch, this. You can't say that. Because it's now got ridiculous. You can't say words, certain words you can't say. You know, I mean, we had an instance in pantomime, which with John Barrowman, who, by the way, I do not think should have been thrown off television, with Dick Whittington in Manchester, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And his line was, he came out and he said, "Hi, you know who I am? Yes, you're John Barrowman." No, last year I was Buttons. Year before that I was Robin Hood. This year I'm a Dick.
Beautiful.
And then he went, Whittington. We got a letter. And that letter went to the front of the Manchester Evening paper, complaining, saying this show's filth.
Absolutely shocking. A perfectly good gag. I know, it's thought control, it's mind control. Andre, the clock's against us. I guess we'd have to show you reruns of the Krankies.
Well, I have to say, it's amazing that the only bloke from 1970s entertainment who wasn't dodgy is the bloke who gets his wife to dress up as a little boy. That is simply an astonishing fact, as far as I'm concerned. But actually, I want to ask a question
There's some newspapers like that as well.
I want to ask a question about earnings, because if you look at somebody like, say, Peter Kay, who's worth maybe 30, 40 million, I know that obviously you guys had a successful career, but, you know, the comics that are coming forward now and people that are working at BBC Studios are sort of on earning 10, 20, 30 million pounds. Are those earnings excessive? I mean, you know, I look at somebody like you and I think, you know, you've got a good lifestyle, but you're not these gazillionaires that are created today.
No, when we did the Crackerjack, which we took from 2.5 million viewers to 8.5 million viewers, we were on £500 a week between us. And I know it was the 80s, but even that was never big money in our game.
No, and we had to pay for our own accommodation.
Luckily we're okay because we invested properly. No comparison. We knew Morecambe and Wisewell before they died. We were with them in Jersey doing a big function, and we discussed this. And they were basically on the money we were on at the same time. Like, I think it got to about 4,000 an episode for television, and they were on basically that way back when they did it. So there wasn't huge money any time. Not like, but I think it's the merchandise that's made it. You know, if you sell, like I was talking to Brendan O'Carroll, in Australia they sold 120,000 DVDs. 120,000.
Amazing. Amazing.
So that was a huge, and he owned all that.
Mrs. Brown's Boys, yeah. Well, look, Alice, we're out of time, but I mean, you were unlucky because you didn't grow up with the Krankies. You've missed out.
Yes, but it's been so lovely and I think really refreshing to meet them, and you guys are so adorable, really. Actually, so cute. Also, it's very refreshing to hear, a more sensible opinion on Scottish independence. And as usual, we see that the people who are pushing for Scottish independence, if they're using coercive and toxic tactics, making it almost, driving fear into those people who do not support an independent Scotland, then, we can obviously see that these people are on the wrong side of history. And it's been lovely.
The one thing you've got to remember about that is Glasgow and Dundee are the big nationalist areas. You take Edinburgh, Inverness, Aberdeen, they're not, and the Highlands, they want it. They do not want it at all. So, but your big populations live in those places. But that's where you've also got your harder people, I'm afraid, more bitter, staunch people. My older brother lives in the Isle of Bute in Rossi, and he couldn't dare put a Union Jack in his front garden or a vote for nationalism. His windows would be broken, every one of them. And he was a town councillor.
Crazy. Imagine that. Well, listen, I mean, I've got to say, you're both heroes to me and to millions in this country, Jeanette and Ian. Fantastic entertainers, so talented, so versatile, and such long careers. And it's been a privilege to have you on the show.
The next 60 years in the business this year.
That's amazing. Are you completely retired, or can we hope for some appearances?
No, we do things like Marigold Hotel and things like that.
The trouble is,
no more getting...
we found out after Jeanette had the last accident when she fell that she's got a touch of osteoporosis.
Right.
And the professor said, I would not really do the throwing yourselves about. And I thought, well, yeah, with 75, it may be a bit ridiculous, falling through prop doors and beds that got in.
Of course.
When I look at what we did, I thought...
He still throws me about as a dummy, though.
But that's privately.
Glad to hear it. The banter's still there. I'm going to extend a formal invitation. We'd love to invite you to be on our panel on this show when you're in London. Will you do that?
Yes, we will. Yes, that'd be lovely. Yes.
You don't have to throw each other around. Just express your opinion, say it like it is, and be the magical double act that you always have been. There you go. Yeah, well, I'll provide the red wine. Ian and Jeanette, thank you so much for joining us. The Krankies, live on Mark Dolan tonight on GB News. Fantastic stuff. Lots more to come on the programme in our news agenda. We're going to talk about staring on public transport. Should it be banned? Is it threatening? Or is it a bit of harmless flirtation? Plus, should offices have a dress code? And is it time for workers to smarten up a bit? We'll discuss all of that, plus another great British game show. And are small men sexy? See you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Dave says, hi Mark, brilliant to see the Krankies. Thank you. Well, Dave, we loved it. How about this? Adrian, haha, bow, we cranky, can I get a word in? Ian can talk underwater. A great couple, love them. Thank you. Brilliant stuff. So much love for the Krankies. Hi Mark, says Karen, I really love Ian and Jeanette. I saw them on a programme about pensioners going to India with a view to retirement, and they both came over as the most positive and happy couple and were my absolute favourites. Their love for each other shines through. Truly uplifting. I just wish the press would stop referring to Nicola Sturgeon as we cranky, as there can never be any comparison whatsoever with that fun sponge. There you go. Great expression. Oh my God, so many Krankies emails coming in. Andrew says, dear Mark, met them and spent many enjoyable evenings with them in the casino in Douglas in the Isle of Man. Wonderful couple. Well, there you go. Indeed so. Well, we've got great guests like that every weekend night at 10 o'clock in Mark Meets. Next up, let's react to the big stories of the day with my fantastic panel. And let's have a look at what we are going to talk about right now. Transport for London have sparked controversy after they launched an anti-sexual harassment campaign last month. It featured a poster that claims intrusive staring of a sexual nature is sexual harassment and is not tolerated. Some have ridiculed the idea, claiming that a ban on staring would be impossible to police, with others claiming that staring, especially when sexual in nature, should not be underplayed. So what do we think? Is staring sexual harassment? Alice, perhaps I could ask you, because I think this policy is focused very much on females on public transport who maybe feel a bit exposed by creepy blokes staring them out. Now, obviously, it doesn't get more creepy than Andre Walker. And I'm happy to stage an intervention if you want.
Report you to Sadiq for that one.
Yeah. Well, have you ever felt uncomfortable with staring or being stared at?
I mean, yes, but would I report it as a crime? I mean, that's just ridiculous. I used to take the tube a lot when I was on my way to school, and once actually someone did, an older guy come up to me and say, like, oh, you know, try to talk to me. But I just said, look, I'm 17, and that was it. Ultimately, I think that, you know, staring isn't something that should be policed. I mean, we're not living in a communist state. That's just relying on a kind of climate of fear where you just denounce someone, and I mean, it's a bit concerning and just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, Andre, what do you think about this?
Well, some of these ones that you're actually putting up, I am concerned about. I saw somebody taking photos of a lady and zooming in and whatever. Yeah. Now, I used my loud, embarrassing voice and basically attacked him.
You don't have one of those.
Get out. You know what? There's no microphone. They just let me put my... But I have to say, one thing I did object to that I saw on Transport for London, they said inappropriate touching is sexual harassment. No, it's not. It's sexual assault. And I just don't believe that, you know, we should have a comparison between staring and people, you know, pressing up against each other, groping. You know, I'm a big fan of Royal Ascot, and somebody was saying to me that in some of those trains that come back from big sporting meets, you know, there are people sort of pushing up against you and really being quite inappropriate. Yeah. And I think that's something that really we should crack down on. But as far as staring goes...
But the thing is, that's a conversation we don't need to have, is it, Aidan? I think it's pretty darn obvious that you don't put your hands on a member of the opposite sex. And I'm not sure that was ever acceptable. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s. I don't remember it being okay to grab women in the 80s, and it's certainly not great now. But the staring thing is a step too far for me.
I was coming back from QPR Fulham on Saturday, defeat for QPR in the West London derby. I was sitting on the tube and I saw that advert, the staring advert, and I thought I was living in a parallel universe because I started thinking about it. Luckily, I was in a carriage on my own, so I wasn't tempted to test out the theory or anything like that. However,
are you that unpopular, by the way?
Yeah, no, it's a bit of BO, I think. That's what it was. All the other carriages were packed. So I was thinking to myself, as usual with a lot of these kind of stuff you get out of TfL, they're not really a credible organisation anymore, in my view, for lots of different reasons which go far beyond what we're discussing tonight. However, how on earth do you enforce this? You know, I complain about someone staring at me. Where does it go from there?
Yeah, I think it's just to kind of attack men, really, and make them feel, just more scared. And that's all it really
Well,
does.
Netflix issued guidance that actually people working on the sets of their TV shows and movies are not allowed to make eye contact with each other because that could be like an invasion of their privacy.
But hang on a second. How can you don't want to be stared at, so you're on TV? I mean, that's completely bonkers.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what we could do. Do you remember with Ken Livingstone, what the taxi drivers used to do when he hailed a black cab? They used to slow down so he'd run for it and then drive off. Because they didn't like him. I personally, I'm not saying this to encourage criminality because I do not believe it's sexual harassment. Why doesn't everyone just stare at Sadiq? So when he gets onto a tube,
it's not a bad idea. And he can arrest the whole of London.
Can you imagine 40 people? But
here's the other thing, Andre.
It's unenforceable, Mark, isn't it?
It's what?
It's unenforceable.
It's unenforceable. But also, what about romance? Because isn't a little bit of staring often the beginning of an overture of a romantic nature, which is sometimes welcome?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I mean,
isn't that how when you're at a party? Isn't it like our eyes met across a crowded room?
I know.
Isn't that staring?
Yeah, Sadiq had a poster telling you not to.
Yeah, sometimes you can be at a party and if you like someone, you might avoid eye contact just so that you don't reveal your cards too much. You know.
Yeah.
I like dating.
But isn't looking at someone away? I mean, Alice, isn't looking at someone away a signal? Actually, quite a polite signal to say you like them. I mean, what do you want? Do you want to be sort of, grabbed or manhandled? Do you want like anonymous texts, or would you rather? Or what about a glance across a crowded room?
Yeah,
or a bus,
cute,
or a train.
But I think the most gruesome thing about this post is the use of the term of a sexual nature. I mean, how do you define that? How do you know?
It's George Orwell's worst nightmare, isn't it?
My dating technique.
I find that poster creepy. That's
wait, your dating technique.
My dating technique.
If that's not time for an advert, I don't know what is.
What you do is sit outside the house for 6 nights in a row. No, I'm joking.
That would do it, but no staring.
Can we try it quickly, Andre?
Oh, look at that! You're looking more beautiful by the second.
Oh, the chemistry is electric.
The chemistry is electric.
Well, I wonder if you're properly dressed, your chance of finding love means you don't have to stare, because it seems as though the lockdown loungewear is on its way out, and smart suits and out shoes are on their way back in, as menswear company Moss Bros announced their plans to open 10 new stores after seeing their sales jump 141%. Of course, Moss Bros sell really smart clothes. Furthermore, footwear giant Kurt Geiger says that demand for high heels and smart men's shoes has skyrocketed in recent months. It's believed this surge in sales of smart clothes is down in part to people returning to the workplace after lockdown. But here's the thing, Aidan, is it actually time for offices to have a dress code?
I think offices always did have a dress code, did they not? I mean,
do you not think they've got very casual these days, offices?
Yeah, I know. But
we used to have Dress Down Friday, didn't we?
Yeah, but then I campaigned at my previous broadcast I worked at for years to get rid of the tie. In fact, I made up an excuse relating to diabetes as to why I couldn't wear a tie, and my boss just inexplicably bought it. However, I spoke to someone who, before the show, actually, when I knew we'd be discussing this story, his family used to be majority shareholders in Moss Bros. And I said, is this true? I showed him the documentation that we'd been presented with before the show, and he said, it's a little bit misleading because he said that there's probably a bit of a spike in smart purchases because weddings are now back on the agenda, whereas they weren't in lockdown. So he said that, and he now manages Nighttown in Paris. So he's gone the other way. He's gone for having grown up with the smart etiquette. He's now gone into streetwear with Nike and everything. So he said it might be a little bit misleading. You do get spikes in growth and trends and things like that. It might be because weddings are back on, and obviously they weren't in 2 years or so. But I do think generally in this country men dress quite badly.
I
do.
What do you make of the office apparel here at GB News?
I think it's amazing.
I think it's good.
I mean, on air it's all right. Off air, Can get a bit casual.
Yes, but you have to remember people working on social hours sometimes. You can't expect someone to come in at 3 o'clock in the morning, as many of our hard-working staff do, dressed up to the nines. I wouldn't expect that. They're running around. They're doing sometimes, 8, 9, 10, 12-hour shifts. If they're not on screen, I can tolerate them being dressing down slightly. I think that's okay. I'm sure if they need to dress up, they'll be happy to take that guidance as well.
Andre?
One of your producers dresses like Where's Wally? We should get him.
Yes, very true. He's even got the stripy T-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely, with the woolly hat.
The bobble hat.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is this is just the most inside baseball because nobody's seen him.
Well, if you started a business and you employed lots of people, would you have a dress code? Because I think it would improve the success of the business.
I think if you're front-facing, it's important. I worked at the House of Commons for many years, and it's not appropriate when you're meeting constituents and meeting somebody from, I don't know, a director of British Gas or whatever, to turn up in shorts and a T-shirt. But I don't think it matters if you're not meeting clients. But look, I think it does get you into a certain frame of mind.
Yeah,
I think that's right. And also, but then again, it depends what you're talking about your uniform being, because we'll make jokes about producers dressing down, but that is their de facto uniform to wear that sort of kit.
Yeah,
presenters dress
a senior journalistic colleague of mine said to me years ago, he said, always carry a tie in your pocket at the very least, because you never know.
I love that.
You never know when you're going to meet the Queen. Never happened for me so far. Well, I didn't even
never say never
either, but it was, it was a rule of thumb to keep one in your back pocket.
I just wonder whether, Alice, there might be a reaction against the kind of slumming it of lockdown, and people are seizing an opportunity to dress more smartly now.
Well, that's the thing. I think, what we wear does affect the way we act and conduct ourselves. And I think for young people, wearing a suit or looking smart is actually very empowering and gives you confidence. And I'd 100% recommend it to look
my mum
smart.
and dad jumped into me from very young to try and dress smartly.
I'll tell you what I don't like, Mark, and I know it's slightly off topic, but the idea when you've got with the school uniforms where you have very fashionable clothes as part of it, because I think a lot of parents can't afford that. So I'm a real stickler for school uniforms being just bog standard.
And also it sets the template of smart clothes, because most uniforms are more or less smart, aren't they?
Yes.
Well, I didn't have a uniform in my sixth form. I loved it.
Yeah, that's
really?
That's because you went to a hideous atheist comp.
I went to quite a poor school in quite a poor ward down in Kent, and my headmaster said to me, I said, why can't we have more tag days? It raised money for the school, or bring in £1 and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, you have to remember, Aidan, that we come from a poor ward, and for some kids, the school uniform is their best clothes.
There you go. Well said. Can't argue with that one. Well, they're very well dressed tonight, are they not? We've saved our best till last. We've got another Great British game show coming up, and we're going to ask a simple question. Are short men sexier? See you in 2.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
On staring, this from Andy in Bristol, who says, Mark, a quick glance is fine, and if eye contact is reciprocated, game on. Bring it on. Still with me, my amazing panel, columnist Andre Walker, political commentator Alice Grant, and sports broadcaster and journalist Aidan McGee. The reign of tall, dark and handsome men appears to be over as new online trends are seeing women a bucking tradition in favour of shorter guys. Social media users on TikTok and Twitter have been using the hashtag #ShortKingSpring online to share their love of men measuring up to or below 5'8", with Tom Holland, Spider-Man of course, Joe Jonas and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in particular leaving the ladies' hearts aflutter. So are short men now more desirable than tall men? Because we know, don't we, Andre, tall, dark and handsome.
It's me.
You are at least 2 out of 3.
Yeah, no, get out of it. I'm not having a conversation with you if you can have a go at me. Look, I'm half Greek. I'm the palest Greek in town, aren't I?
Is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Although Patrick Christie's is also half Greek and half Irish.
The best people are.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a good combo, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I thought I was short at, 5'11", but 5'8" is very small. I mean, I didn't know Volodymyr Zelensky's like a little fella, is he?
Yeah, and the thing about him tying in with our earlier story, not only is he he's basically short but very broad, so he looks like he could look after himself, but he goes round in very casual clothes. I feel like he's brought the hoodie back as well.
Volodymyr Zelensky, somebody said, did you have all those green T-shirts before the invasion? It's one of those things where he must...
army wardrobe.
He must have gone on Amazon, where it's sort of 10 for 20 quid or whatever. He's got the look. He's definitely got the look.
He definitely does.
So
but
I don't
what do you
think so. I think a suitors would be much more appropriate.
Do you reckon?
Yes.
You're in a bunker.
Did you see Macron trying to also do his as well?
Yeah, Macron promised that. But is it not showing that he's man of the people? He's getting his hands dirty, fighting a war.
No,
he hasn't got time to put a suit on.
It's ridiculous.
Do you think so?
Yes.
No, I was on his side.
Actually, Putin, he's always in a suit, isn't he?
Yeah.
About the only good thing we can say about the guy. Is he short? I wonder how tall Putin is. So my team should look up.
He's small as well.
He's small.
He's a little bloke who wear massive lifts in his shoes, though.
Putin's what they call in America a chicken hawk, isn't he? Because he's really hawkish about sending people to war, but he'd never go himself. I mean, literally, those big desks, he's afraid to even sit with his advisors just in case he gets a virus, let alone driving one of those defective tanks through Ukraine.
Well, yeah, I'm actually just having a look at his height, and he's 5'7".
Oh, that's quite tall.
Is there such a thing as small man syndrome, do you think, Alice? The Napoleon complex. The idea that because you're short, you've got something...
Zelensky.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something to prove to the world.
I'm joking. I'm quite petite, so I can't really comment on it.
What about shorter men? I mean, would you court a man shorter than you?
I'm very small, so you'd have to be very tiny.
It would be going some. It would be hard. I mean, I made a documentary for Channel 4 about very tall women, and what they always wanted a guy that was taller than them, but because they were like 6'3", it was actually hard to find a bloke that was.
Cool. I have on a dating apps, for example, I would have a height restriction of 5'9". I don't, so I wouldn't want to go. I'm 5'11", and I wouldn't go out with someone taller than me.
Is that right?
I wouldn't. No,
Yeah, you don't want someone.
I just think it looks a bit silly.
You don't want someone towering over you.
No. It's just kind of like that. I don't like that feeling of inferiority.
So, what is the perfect height for a man?
For a man, I don't really know. I mean, I suppose 6 foot, 5'11". I don't think it's an ideal height. But sometimes I think of like Tom Cruise when I was growing up. He was very short, but he wasn't. I know that if you went to our local nightclub in Bromley, he'd have a choice of anybody in there. Male or female. You think of him in Cocktail back in 1989.
I remember I went to Dublin and noticed that the good people of the Irish Republic are all shorter than people from England.
Irish people are very good looking on average.
Yeah.
When I went to Dublin, I was so surprised.
They are very attractive. Fabulous accent.
I met the tall one from Westlife.
The English, not so much.
I met the tall one from Westlife, and he only came up to about there, and I thought, well, how big are the other ones?
Yeah. Well, lucky you that he came up to there. Spare me the gory details.
You're about 6'5"?
Yeah, I'm 6'4.5", actually. That's right. Yeah. And I was of average height until I was about 14. Yeah. And then I suddenly shot up. And
Are you worried about this trend?
Well, no, I never occurred to me. Yeah, it's a huge problem. Yeah, but I never felt tall because I was pretty average height for most of my team.
But are your kids very tall?
Changed. They are. They're lanky. They look exactly like the milkman. Now, it's time for this. We are going to play tonight's Great British Game Show based upon the height of famous male celebrities. We're going to play a game of Super Size Me. Can you at home and my panel guess the height of these celebrity males? Let's start with Tom Cruise. How tall is he? Andre.
5'5".
5'5"?
Tom Cruise, I'm going to go 5'7".
Yeah,
5'7".
5'6".
5'7". The points go to Aidan. Exactly 5'7". You get 1 point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, great.
You definitely do. You're in pole position. How about this? Stephen Merchant, star of The Office. How tall is he?
I think he's about 6'6".
6'6".
I'm going 6'7".
6'7"?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Alice?
think you're right.
6'5".
Okay, the points go to Aidan again. He's 6'7".
Oh,
Tom Holland plays Spider-Man. How tall is he?
I'm going 5'8".
5'6".
I don't actually know who he is. At 6 foot.
He's 5'6". Well done, Alice. You get the points there. How about LeBron James?
Oh, come on.
I'm going to go
6'7".
No, I'm going higher than that. I'm going to go 6'9".
I'm going to go 7'1".
6'9".
Oh.
Aidan smashing this.
I've interviewed him.
Okay, Volodymyr Zelensky. How tall is he? He is, of course, the leader.
You said
Prime Minister.
5'7".
Did I give it away earlier? I did, didn't I?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
5'7", so well done. You get points for listening, Andre. Napoleon, how tall was he?
5'9".
Was he really? No. 5'3".
No, it's wrong, isn't it? Because there's a difference between the French measurement and the British measurement.
Well, feet and inches.
He was 5'8", but we thought he was 5'4", didn't we?
Well,
5'9".
according to Wikipedia, which is the fount of all knowledge, 5'2". So I'll give the points to Alice. Peter Dinklage.
Who is that?
From Game of Thrones.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4'10".
I think 4'2".
Alice?
4'6".
You're going to get the points. 4'5", 4.5 feet. That's right. Peter Crouch, how tall is he?
6'7".
Well done.
Oh, what
you go.
I've interviewed him many times.
How do you know this? Very specific.
He's paid for keeping on.
What, do you Google his height?
How tall am I?
I would go 5'4".
Okay, and let's finish. We'll go quickly. Warwick Davis from The Office.
4 foot.
Oh no, extras.
Extras. I'm
4'4".
4'6".
4'6". Alice?
4'5".
And what did you give me?
4'4".
Okay, you get the points. 3.9.
Oh.
And lastly, well, I've given it away actually. It's me, Mark Dolan. You see me there. It's a lovely event.
4.5.
6'4.5".
Yeah, bingo. That's right. And Aidan takes the points.
How do you know all that?
I interviewed Peter Crouch.
A lot of unnecessary knowledge. My amazing panel, by the way, they know a lot of things they don't need to, but highly entertaining. Do come back and see us soon. Thanks for your company as well. I'm back tomorrow at 9, but stick around because I'm hosting Headliners next.
Alex Deacon here with your weekend weather forecast from the Met Office. A chilly one, but generally a dry and a fine one. Clear skies at night will lead to frosty mornings, but we should see some sunny spells and most will have a dry weekend. Far from dry today over the Channel Islands. This area of low pressure brought some wet and windy weather, particularly to parts of France, but it's cleared away and it leaves behind the UK with northerly winds, but not as strong, those northerly winds, as recent days. And still a few showers to come this evening over parts of the Midlands and South East England, where they could be heavy. A few showers keeping going in West Wales and northern Scotland, where it may turn icy as temperatures drop down below freezing. The showers here, a mixture of hail, rain, sleet and some snow. For most, though, it's dry and clear, and that will allow the temperatures to plummet close to freezing in towns and cities below in the countryside. So a chilly start to Saturday, but generally a fine sunny morning. A few showers for Northern Ireland may drift into North Wales, down into parts of the Midlands. We'll certainly keep showers going through the day over northern Scotland, where there'll be snow on hills, but even perhaps at times to lower levels, particularly across the far north. A chilly feel here with still a brisk wind. Elsewhere, well, it's not warm, but at least those winds are a little lighter than recent days, 10 to 13 generally. During Saturday night, again, showers keep going in northern Scotland, so again, perhaps a little icy. For most, though, it's dry and it's clear, so if you're heading out during Saturday night, expect a chill, expect a frost on Sunday morning, certainly in the countryside. But again, for many, it's going to be a sunny day. We will see more cloud developing during Sunday in the west and perhaps late in the day, a bit of patchy rain trickling into Northern Ireland. The odd shower elsewhere, but most places dry and bright. Temperatures still below average, but again, the winds will be light, getting that sunshine. Shouldn't feel all that cold, certainly compared to recent days. And temperatures are on the up as we go through next week. Yes, we've got weather fronts moving in, so there will be cloud and showers, but with winds coming up from the south, it is going to turn warmer next week.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.